Hey guys, I hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Whether y'all are watching this in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening, I'm glad y'all are here. First thing I want to do is I want to say thank you to all the channel members. Thank you guys and girls. I appreciate you more than you know. And thank you for anybody coming in to check out my knife, my EDC content. I really do appreciate it. If you're so inclined, if you'd hit that subscribe button down below there, it would really help me out. So today, what we are going to do is we are going to talk about locking knives and the different types of locks that make up locking knives. So in my collection, so in the old days we had slip joints, right? They were held open by the spring, but they were not a locking knife per se. And then I've got an example of an early liner lock from Great Eastern Cutlery that is this old guy here, but it's got this kind of liner that you push out of the way. It's still got a back spring, but that's what locks that guy up. And then came the back lock. This is an old Buck 110. But the back lock was kind of the first locking knife, the locking knife that I grew up with, the only really locking knife that I was aware of until I kind of got into the knife hobby many, many years ago, and then I got back into it more recently. You've had things come out like double detent knives, which are not a locking knife by any mechanism or by any stretch of the imagination. They're just a knife that has a detent that keeps the blade open till it breaks. It's got a much lighter, in my opinion, break point than a slip joint, but again, they're going to vary. But when we get into lock types, I wanted to talk about modern locking knives and the ones I've purchased since I've been in the knife collecting hobby. First out of the gate is going to be this little guy right here. And this is my Spyderco Dragonfly. And I believe this one's in ZDP 189. And it uses a back lock. Just like, in a lot of ways, the Buck 110. You basically have this spring right here that when the knife opens up, it locks into place, holding that blade, unlike a slip joint, from getting it to be able to break loose of that spring. The only way you can get it to break loose of the spring is to push the back here, hence back lock, which pops up that spring and allows the blade to close. So you've got a modern back lock knife. Well, Cold Steel wanted to improve upon that back lock knife. So what Cold Steel has done is they have come out with their Triad lock. It's been out for a while now. It's on a lot of different knives that Cold Steel makes, but it is, I don't know if you can see the little gap through there. There's almost a hammer shaped piece of this spring as opposed to just a straight spring that locks right back against the tang of the blade. This actually falls down in a slot, locks the knife up in two places, both here on the tang and down here. So you've got a very strong lock. Arguably, possibly one of the strongest locks in the game, and that is the Spyderco Triad lock, which to me is a version of a back lock, has a little bit better action, seems to and appears to be stronger, and looking at it, even without being an engineer, you can tell why. But that is the Triad lock. In my opinion, kind of another bar lock or back lock. Then you've got the liner lock. The liner lock is either a steel liner or an inset liner that's made out of steel or titanium. This one's titanium with a steel lock bar insert. But basically what happens is you've got this liner that is bent under tension. So when the knife closes and opens, this liner, once the knife passes this point, that liner pops out and engages, creating that lockup point behind that blade. So you've got your lockup point right here, and it locks in very securely with that liner. So you've got solid handles on both sides. You've got the liner that you just simply go in there and push out of the way with your finger to get it to close. But it's going to lock up very solid with that liner lock. Modern liner lock. So moving on, we come to a plunge lock or a button lock. You used to see these only, at least I did only, on automatic locks. So you've got this knife, it opens up under a tension with a spring. To release it from that spring, you've got to push that little plunge there that allows the blade to open, and then it's locked up. You push the plunge, it allows it to close against the spring. I learned about the plunge lock or the button lock with the ProTech Malibu, which was kind of an aha moment for me in my knife collecting game. This is the ProTech Mordax. It is a plunge lock. And if you can see through here, you've got this plunge that when it opens up, the fat part of that plunge comes back out and locks that spine up as tight as you would want. By having this button be able to disengage that, it lets the blade simply fall shut. So you've got this little plunge. You can see it right down through there. And you can see the little wide part on the right that has come in and locked into that blade. When I push that out of the way, whoops, that blade falls loose, closes up. So the plunge lock is probably arguably one of the least hard use that might have a chance to disengage, which all of these do, I guess. They have a chance. But the plunge lock is a great convenience in keeping the knife locked up, but it's not something that I would necessarily want to go out and hard use, knowing that it's got limitations, right? And then you've got the axis lock slash bar lock slash river lock slash name it. But Benchmade started it and patented it with the axis lock. It is a bar style lock that uses two little sets of S-springs. And what happens is this bar has those S-springs that put it under tension. So the bar wants to come forward, right? Closed, it comes forward. Open, it comes forward. Because those little leaf springs, or whatever you want to call them, push that bar forward. And when it does that, it is engaging right behind that lock there. So what you're getting is a very, very solid knife with a very strong locking system. So this bar, you have to physically pull it back, and you've got to pull it back far enough to clear right here, so it will slide off of that and unlock. This is the Benchmade Adamas, Mini Adamas. It uses an axis lock like most Benchmades, and I felt it was only fair to use the Benchmade showing the bar lock. But Vosteed makes it, Kaiser makes it. There are a lot of different bar locks. Actually, I think before the bar lock, I might have gotten these backwards. I'm trying to go in some kind of chronological order. But Spyderco uses a ball lock in one of their knives, the Mannix 2. And I really like this lock. I actually wish they would use it more. But instead of having an S-spring or a leaf spring or whatever you want to call it, this one's got a linear spring, a straight spring, and it's got this bar that you can pull back, or this ball, because there's a ceramic ball that sits up in there. And when this knife opens, if you look through here, you will see that when it comes there, you've got a slot where this, because of the spring tension, slides right up into, making this a very strong lock. You have to pull that back to disengage the lock. So it locks up very tight, very similar to a bar lock, but just using a slightly different mechanism. And that's Spyderco's ball lock, and this is on the Mannix 2. So as we continue to talk about Spyderco, we'll talk about their most famous lock and one of my favorite locks, and that is the compression lock. And the compression lock, to me, who doesn't have a good way of explaining things, is kind of like an upside down liner lock, or a liner lock that instead of accessing it from underneath the knife, you're able to access and move that liner from the top of the knife, and it locks up in a different place on the blade. So right under that stop pin, this compression lock, just like a liner lock, pops into place and locks that guy up. The advantage of the compression lock is you do not have to get inside the blade's path to disengage it, because you can simply, from the outside of the knife, push the compression lock in. It releases that liner, or that top liner, and you're in business after that. And then one of our community members, my buddy Justin at OCD for EDC, has invented a little thing called Compression Made Easy, or CME, which is a little piece of titanium, G10, carbon fiber that fits right in here on the different models, which brings this tab out to where it's flush right here, making it much easier to use. It is a little awkward to pull through like you would on a liner lock, except you're doing it on the top of the knife. But once you've done it a while, you get used to it. To me, it's second nature. The Compression Made Easy was originally, I think, designed to help it be a more left-handed friendly knife, but in all actuality, it makes it a more friendly knife all the way around because you're not pinching so tight. But that is Spyderco's compression lock. And while we're talking about Spyderco, I'm going to jump out of turn here, and I am going to grab my Spyderco Smock, which uses a lock that used to be a Spyderco Smock exclusive, which is this button smock lock, or whatever you want to call it. I'm calling it now a top liner lock because Vosteed, and I think Kaiser's getting ready to come out with one, but Vosteed's been doing a fantastic job with it. What it is like the compression lock, is like the compression lock in reverse, where you've got this liner that pops out right here and locks that blade up right in here. And when the blade travels open and gets to that point, it's going to lock out. Instead of having to reach through or use your finger here, this button is bolted on to that liner. So when I push that button, it pushes the liner out of the way and it unlocks the lock. So for all practical purposes, I look at the lockup, and it's not the same, but I look at the lockup of a liner lock, a compression lock, and this smock lock, or top liner lock, but it's button activated, is kind of the same thing. But it's not. They're different. But that is the smock lock, one of my favorite locking systems, the top liner lock. And it is a Spyderco, or was a Spyderco exclusive. Then we come to the Chris Reeves Integral Liner Lock, which people are like, what's that? That's the frame lock, people. Chris Reeves was the gentleman who came up with and made the first frame lock on Chris Reeves' knife. And now we all know them as a frame lock, which, unlike a liner lock or unlike any of the other locks we've looked at, this frame, which is usually going to be titanium, I've seen them in steel too, is tensioned and bent, and you've got this cutout either on the outside or on the inside that gives you that tension, that both provides the detent when you open the knife, and it locks the knife up when it is open. So when it's open, this liner moves in to lock up on that blade. And what you'll notice on frame locks is you've got opposing geometries to engage and further keep that knife engaged. And on top of that, since it is an exposed frame lock, when you grip the knife under pressure, your hand is furthering the engagement of that frame. Hence, frame lock or Chris Reeves integral lock. One of my favorite locks. A lot of people, it's not theirs. I love it. I love to manipulate frame locks. I love the quality of frame locks, and I'm just a big fan. I also am a huge fan of the Bolster Lock, or the internal frame lock, which is a little different than a liner lock because you've basically got the frame doing the same thing that we had on the frame lock, but instead of it being the entire titanium frame, you're able to set it behind a scale material, whether it's micarta like this, whether it's carbon fiber, you name it, but it has the same strength and stability of a frame lock because where it's locking up, you've got the full thickness of the frame and the same opposing geometry, which really lock that up. So for me, this knife is a little cleaner looking than a frame lock. However, what I've noticed about it is you're not getting that same extra strength when you grip it. You are, but you're not getting it the whole size, right? So to me, I think a frame lock is a little bit more desirable maybe, but the liner lock, 99% of y'all, or the Bolster Lock, you guys will probably prefer better. To me, it's a great lock, very similar to a frame lock, allows you to have a little cleaner side here on the clip side, works fantastic, and just another great locking mechanism. And this is the God of Mischief. Haven't been talking about the knives more than the locking systems. Then we've got another Andrew Demko lock, which, by the way, he's the one that with Spyderco came up with the Triad lock. But this is the Scorpion lock. This is one of my favorite locking systems. People love or hate this knife. I fall in the category of a love it guy. When I first got it, I cut myself more with this knife than any other, trying to learn how to manipulate it. And what's unique about it is you've got this G10 or aluminum spring, aluminum, under tension, which tensioned right back here. So that is snappy, right? So that's what's giving you your detent. As it rolls open, it's pushing this out. You'll see this notch right here in the blade, and you'll see this pin right there in the Scorpion lock. So when it comes around, boom, it slams down into that blade. That blade's going nowhere. And when you hold this lock, the total weight of your hand is pushing this lock more deeply into that groove. So to me, this is probably one of the, if not the strongest locking system in my collection, according to me. A lot of people will probably tell me that the Triad lock's stronger. Could be. I think this is the shit. And it is the Scorpion lock. It's an Andrew Demko design. I think it's absolutely ingenious. I mean, it fits perfectly. You have no up and down, no side to side. That lock is just increasing the stability of everything that this knife does. This is the 8015 by Cold Steel, and this is the Scorpion lock. And this is the only knife that carries that lock. A similar lock, but that's very different and came before the Demko lock, is the Snex lock. The Snex lock, the reason I brought out the Wii Vision R is you can fully pull this Snex lock out in this particular model. So where the Demko Shark lock, which we're going to look at here in a second, has a spring up front, this spring is back here on the back. But what you have is you have on the blade, you've got this same little divot that's just like we saw on the Cold Steel there, right? So when I put this back in, this Snex Lock has this area that's just a steel pin. So the spring is under tension. The spring is going to push this bar into that hole and lock this up like a tank. You can see right through here where it's locked up, because this pin, when I pull it, see it disengage, see it come off of that, whoops. See how it comes off of that, and when it does, the knife just shuts. The Vision FG is the Civivi version, which is even done better than the Vision R, but this is a great top actuated lock. I think it's fantastic. Absolutely one of my favorites. I was stoked to see that it's being used again by Tactile Knife Company. They're using the same lock. There's your little notch. Designed a little bit differently, but your spring's at the back. This is an American-made version. You pull back on it, releases that blade, just like on the Vision. Great lock. Maybe not one of the strongest, but definitely one of the funnest. And the lock that started it for me, but didn't come before the Snex Lock, is the Demko lock, the Shark Lock. The Shark Lock is the lock that Andrew designed and patented after he left Cold Steel, put it on the 8020, his USA-made knife. Then the 20.5 made this lock available to the masses. This happens to be a Shark Cub, which is a little thinner. And I've even got this lock on the first company that licensed it, Flytanium, which is the Arcade. But basically, very similar to how the Snex Locks works, except the spring's further back. This knife has a little hollow area here that has a spring in it. So there's a spring that forces this forward, right? Push it backwards, it's forced forward. So you've got this area right here. When you open this knife, when it clears that lower area of the tang, this entire locking mechanism, which looks like a big oval, slides forward into this lock. This lock is going nowhere. The Shark Lock is a brilliant design. Very, very fidgety, very sturdy, very stable. On the full-size Demkos, the 8020s, they're tanks. I think this lock's fantastic. I think it's revolutionary. It's the reason I like Demko knives, is the Shark Lock. And this is a Shark Cub, the Andrew Demko straight spring activated Shark Lock. And then we will look at Microtech's answer to the ball lock, maybe. This is the Microtech Stitch with their new Ram Lock. The Ram Lock uses a straight spring. This is under tension, so when you pull that back, it releases the blade. It slides forward under tension, so when it slides forward, it locks into place. So this is absolutely locked up like a tank. I have to pull back on the Ram Lock to get that freed up, because when it goes up, you'll notice the back of the blade pushes this back. See it going back, and then when it gets to its open position, it slams locked. And that spring is giving it all that tension forward, which is keeping it locked up. Ram Lock's a great lock. I've really been a fan of it. I got to do a little cleaning on this knife. But this is the Microtech Stitch with a Ram Lock. And then the final couple of locks, I really didn't know how to talk about these, and they're not really folding knives, but they lock up nonetheless. This is the Riot Exo, the Exo M. And what's unique about it is just a gravity knife. You open it, this slides forward. When it closes, this little pill-shaped pin that goes all the way through the blade and slides through that exoskeleton. Right here, there's a cutout. When I close it, it's locked shut. The blade's not opening. When it goes out and I close it, the handle and the skeleton locks it up. It's not opening, and when I hold it, there's no way it's opening because my hand is holding it together. So much so that the first version of the Exo did not have this locking mechanism. But that is a neat new locking mechanism that is every bit as sturdy as some of the ones that are more traditional that we've been looking at. But that is, I don't even know what we're going to call that, but that's the exoskeleton lock, we'll call it. And then the final lock in my collection, and I don't even know how to classify it except a double spring automatic. So this is locked up. When it opens, the spring, I haven't taken it apart, so I haven't seen where it engages. I wish there are a lot of people that would know, unlike me. But you push it forward, it opens, locks up. You pull back, it releases it, and pulls the knife into the handle. So guys, those are the locking systems that I have in my collection. And I've probably left some out. You've got your OTF, you've got your exoskeleton lock, you've got your ram lock, you've got your Demco shark lock, you've got your Snex lock, whoops. You have got your scorpion lock. You have got your bolster lock, your Chris Reeves integral, or your frame lock. You have your smuck lock, or your top liner lock, your compression lock, your bar lock or axis style lock, your ball lock on the Spyderco Manix 2, you've got your plunge lock or button lock, you've got your internal liner lock, you've got your triad lock, and finally, you've got your little old back lock. So guys, those are all the locks in my knife collection. I've got a lot of different variations, but I just wanted to go through that. Different video, I know. Hopefully it was informative, educational, somewhat entertaining. Thanks for watching. If you're so inclined, please hit that subscribe button. And please look out for the guy or gal to your left. Please look out for the guy or gal to your right. Please look out for each other. Go forward with love in your heart and choose debate, not hate. I love you all. Peace.